Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of PLASTICAST, the Pacific Northwest Consortium on Plastic podcast. I'm your host, John Dickens. I'm a grad student at Oregon State University, and I study microplastics and their impact on marine organisms. Joining me today is owner of Local Ocean Seafood and former MRMer at OSU, Laura Anderson. Thanks so much for your time today, Laura.
Hi, thanks, John. Glad to be here.
As plastic is the central theme to our podcast, I want to discuss plastic use in the era of COVID-19. And so I thought, what better establishment to explore the interface of fresh local seafood and plastic usage than one of my favorite restaurants on the coast, Local Ocean Seafood. I have to start off by saying, Laura, I've been eating seafood since before I was born, and it's probably safe to say that my blood might as well have a copper hemoglobin nucleus as opposed to iron because I've eaten so much. But first and foremost, Laura, I want to acknowledge that we are experiencing a global pandemic. Back in November 2019, coronavirus became an existential threat, and we've observed its progression ever since, resulting in shelter-in-place quarantine measures worldwide. And now that we live in the era of COVID-19, PPE is an essential accessory in our work, in our trips to the grocery store, and even casual affairs like just hanging out with our friends. So many industries have been ravaged by a massive economic downturn, including the restaurant industry. Many restaurants have had to temporarily shut down, while others have adapted their business models to accommodate takeout and delivery options. Laura, how has Local Ocean adapted to COVID-19 measures?
Well, John, I feel like we've tried a lot of different things. In the 4 months, we had initially just moved into a takeout only model that a lot of restaurants embraced right after the closure announcement hit. We also developed an at-home meal kit that we're still doing. That's been very popular, called DockBox. So that allows people to recreate the Local Ocean dining experience in their home and get their hands, involved in actually cooking. We've gone back and forth with takeout and back and forth with dine-in. We are currently poised to reopen dine-in this weekend, and we are not doing takeout right now. So we're trying different mixes to see what the best fit is, and that's where we're at today.
Ordered a DockBox last night, and I'm so much looking forward to the black cod and tuna wrap. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I get the owner privilege of doing the R&D on the dock boxes, so I already tried those dishes, and they're super fun to cook and really satisfying. One of the things that I like to do at home is just unpack the box like a customer would, and packaging and presentation is a big part of that. I know how I feel when I have to throw away plastic packaging and the trash, the landfill trash, because of the recycling limitations that we have, and it doesn't feel good. So I am really aware of how the customer experiences that too when they have to deal with what is required. We have to have some packaging that we send this food out in. So it's really important, and it's really challenging at the same time.
You kind of answered my second question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it's pointed. But in an effort to maintain their businesses, many establishments have had to switch to using a hybrid model of paper and plastic products, while other restaurants, in an effort to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 infection, have gone with full-blown disposable single-use plastic models. Regardless of whatever option, everyone's doing their best to stay afloat in these turbulent times. Restaurants in general already have to be incredibly stringent on health codes. Simply put, it's complicated. We want to be environmentally sustainable, but we also want to consider the health of our community. So Laura, I'm wondering how Local Ocean has approached this subject, and what materials have you been able to use as packaging and cutlery to serve our communities?
Well, I think, John, as you know, the topic of disposable usage and materials is really complex. Scientifically, what plant-based and bioplastics actually means and how they interact with the environment it's a thesis unto itself. We have kind of a bad, good, better, best approach that we take to managing our packaging. The bad that we try to avoid but sometimes cannot is just a full-on plastic, kind of your conventional plastic. The good that we try to move towards where we can are plant-based and bioplastics, but I recognize the limitations of those. They're not quite as environmentally benign as some consumers might believe. Just because it biodegrades, it doesn't mean that it does so under conditions that are not harmful to the environment, particularly when you look at the marine environment. So more often than not, we try to go towards paper and cellulose-based packaging, be it bamboo or paper, and a lot of those have been around for a long time. Paper to-go boxes are not uncommon. We've been using those for years. But coming up with cutlery and so forth that works and is affordable for single use is still a challenge. Our best option is always to just not use. So when it comes to DockBox, for example, we try to consolidate packaging. So if we can get multiple items into a paper box rather than boxing them separately, that's great. We recently moved to an exterior packaging that has an insulated liner that we're accepting as returns in all of our drop-off locations. So that's great, not just from a reuse perspective, but the economics of it are good too. Those cost money, and if we're able to sanitize and safely reuse those, then there's a good economic case for that as well. So that's kind of a best solution. We actually are starting to look at durable boxes and using a return system with customers on these durable boxes. That might be kind of a holy grail. We'll see if we can get there. If people are doing a subscription basis, we might be able to, but that's kind of a best also. So it's really just a scale. But, you know, like honestly, we have certain fluids that are not performing well in the bioplastics and are not appropriate for paper, and we had to use a more conventional plastic packaging last week. I wasn't really thrilled about that, but we also have to take into account the performance of the product and make sure that it doesn't compromise in transit, you know.
It's really good to get your insider perspective on how all these complicated issues are kind of coming together in restaurants. And, you know, some recent research has shown that COVID-19 can live on certain plastic surfaces for up to something like 72 hours, while its lifespan on other surfaces like cotton and cloth can be much less than that. But there is some debate on whether it is safer to use single-use disposable plastics versus reusable materials. And I'm wondering, Laura, I'm sure you are in communication with several other restaurants around the area. Do you notice a general increase in the amount of plastic products that other restaurants have had to use during this time, or are other people trying to seek out more sustainable options?
Well, I can't say that it's plastic per se, but single use, yes, indeed. We see it in our city garbage cans in our park areas and at the beach, where there's just an overflowing amount of to-go packaging because that's how people are eating now. So that's a concern. I think most of the restaurants that I frequent and like to see are using paper-based to-go containers, but you're still seeing your bioplastics and plastics for beverages and for things like sauces and so forth. There's alternatives out there. We've ordered a lot of samples from companies that are pushing the envelope on packaging, and we've seen some pretty cool stuff. One of the problems with these companies is that unless they're coming through a mainline distributor that's bringing you product, like your Cisco or your US Foods that's dropping orders with you every week, ordering directly through a company at the volumes that we're requiring, going through UPS and FedEx shipping channels, adds a lot of expense, and sometimes it can just be a problem when they're not available. There's shortages right now in packaging in our local cash and carry, for example. You can't just go in and expect to get the product that you need. So we have to kind of be flexible in some ways. We're trying some new things, but we also have to maintain a steady flow of what we need. So we're working kind of both ends of it.
Fantastic. Laura, is there anything else that you'd like listeners to know about the restaurant industry and plastics in the time of COVID-19?
Well, I think that we should try as consumers to do two things. One is, since we know that we're going to be eating takeout a lot, if I'm going to go on a trip to the coast, I'm probably just going to bring my own silverware with me. And then I can just say, oh, I don't need that. And that's going to help a lot. Even though they're not going to take your cup and fill it, you can opt to have a soda in a bottle that you can take to the bottle drop and have recycling rather than getting that Pepsi off of the soda fountain. So preparing ourselves as customers to be a little bit more self-sufficient in some of those things, I think, will be helpful. And the other thing is just to be mindful of your takeout packaging when you're visiting, especially if you can take your packaging out with you, take it home at the end of the day and use your own trash stream to dispose of that. That's really helpful. What's happening with our local receptacles here on the Newport Bayfront, for example, is they get overflowing, and then birds like seagulls and crows come in and attack that, and then the garbage strews out, and then it's going to blow into the bay, and there is our direct, rather point source, really, pollution of plastics into the ocean. So if you see that bin is overflowing, just think, well, maybe I can just put this in the back of my car and I'll take it home with me and dispose of it there. So those are a couple of things that I'd like to see people be more mindful of while they're eating a lot of takeout in the future.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Laura.
Thanks, John. It's been great to talk with you. And, as I said, this is a complex topic, and who knows, maybe this COVID-19 pandemic and all of our increased use of disposable items will help us push the whole conversation forward into some more sustainable solutions for the future.
Certainly. And also thank you and to your crew for providing our communities with fresh, local, sustainably caught seafood. It's delicious. It's comfort food for me. You can find Local Ocean on the web and on Twitter at the address in the linear notes. And thank you, listeners, for catching the 6th episode of PLASTICAST, the Pacific Northwest Consortium of Plastics podcast. Tune in bi-weekly episodes as we explore the world of plastic pollution research and policy. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Pacific Northwest Microplastic. I'm your host, John Dickens. Have a great day and get yourselves a DockBox.
Thanks, John.